It's great to see you.
Charlie, it's great to see you. I mean, I've been at Omaha, and I think I've made, prior to the last week, I probably made 2 plane flights in 2 years. I mean, once to see my sister. I mean, just free at last.
You're 91.
I'm 91.
Good health.
I couldn't be in better health. It's a little discouraging to me that my partner in business life, everything else, Charlie Munger, is 98.
You're still going strong?
I'm still the kid.
You have a successor in place?
We have a successor in place, but he's not warming up.
You're not ready to go.
I'm still in overtime, but I'm out there.
You still tap dance to work?
I tap dance to work, Charlie. I've always been happy in the work, but I've never been happier. I've got the most interesting, to me, job in the world. I've got people you wouldn't believe that support me. It takes about 4 or 5. I mean, it takes a village to a degree, but I've got 3 people sitting right down within 20 feet of me, or 30 feet. My assistant, Deb Bosonic, the fellow that handles all the trades I tell him to do in the morning, and money and billions flow in and out, and he takes care of it all. Mark Millard, and I've got a chief financial officer, Mark Hamburg, who knows more than most of the finance offices and legal offices and everything else in the world. And we've all worked together for dozens of years, and we like each other, and everybody helps me. It couldn't be better.
Choosing who you work with.
It's everything. I mean, I write a little bit about the annual report, but the choosing what you do and who you do it with. You're gonna, if you're like me, you're gonna spend 70 years or something. My assistant hasn't worked the whole time with me, but she went to work for Berkshire when she was 17, and she still looks 17, and now she'll be with us 50 years or pretty soon, and they know me forward and backwards, and they accept my eccentricities. They help me.
What would they be?
But I would say this: if you take Mark Millard, I walk in the morning, or I call him first, and I tell him exactly. I've already done it for today, and I tell him exactly what I want to do, and he does it all day. And some days, a good many days, he moves billions of dollars, purchases and sales. He takes care of the whole thing.
When do you make those decisions?
I think all the time. I'm on the clock at Berkshire all the time.
Walk me through a typical day.
Well, a typical day is I get to work at I get up usually at a few minutes before 7, so I can catch it's the 7 o'clock news and network news in Omaha, and so I get up a few minutes before that, and sometimes I turn on the network news. I always turn on CNBC, and I look at what prices are doing and what's happening in Europe and what's happening in Japan, and I then about the market opens our time, 8:30. Although we're doing maybe things in Japan or Germany too, but and I call Mark at 8 with the market opening at 8:30, and I tell him exactly what to do for the day, and I probably won't change it during the day, and it's usually a percentage of something. I will say buy or sell X percent of the trading volume, and I'll give him a list of things. If there's a limit of price, I'd give him the price. And then he does it all day. And I don't need to check with him. And he sometimes does billions of dollars worth of business. He buys the treasury bills, which we, in the last couple of years,
Have a bunch of.
we probably bought $5 billion every Monday. And I would guess that we might be the biggest buyer. And just week after week after week after week.
You made your first investment when you were 11 years old?
In 1942, 80 years ago, I took $114.75, every penny I'd saved, and I bought 3 shares of City Service Preferred. And City Service was a pretty well-known name now and then. In fact, in 1920, City Service, I think, was the 4th largest company in the United States in terms of number of shareholders. It was a big company, and so it had a preferred stock that was selling at 38 that had started skipping the dividends during the Depression. So it accumulated dividends on it of $60 or $70. And of course, it was par value of $100 too, and it was selling at 38. And at breakfast one morning, I follow little stocks every day, but then I made my plunge, and I had roughly this amount of money, so I bought 3. I don't remember this precisely, but I think I told my dad in the morning, "Now, let's move, Dad." Pop, I call it. But let's move, Pop.
But you felt the thrill of it then.
Oh, I've been reading about it and following it. The whole market. I really had read every book in the Omaha Public Library that was on the stock market.
By 11?
By 11, I'll guarantee you. And some of them twice. I started out reading the ones in my dad's office, and I just loved to read. I read other things too, but I knew more when I was 11 than I know now. I mean, in terms of the actual mechanics of the stock. I mean, I don't know what happens when I put an order in now. I mean, it gets in the machinery of the way orders are executed now. I would know if I sat and worked in a trading room for a day or two, but I don't really know the mechanics as well of what happens when an order is processed today as I did when I was 11.
What is it you enjoyed the most about it? Because you don't pick stocks, you pick companies.
Yeah, but when I was 11, I picked stocks. I had the whole wrong idea. I was interested in watching stocks, and I thought stocks were things that went up and down, and I charted them. I read books on technical analysis. I read Edwards and McGee. I think that was the classic then. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of pages. And I read that whole thing over and over again. I read Garfield, Drew, I read everything. And I thought the first 8 years, I thought the important thing was to predict what a stock would do and predict the stock market. And then I read Ben Graham, when I was 19 or 20. And I realized that I was doing it exactly the wrong way. But it didn't hurt that I had that background and everything. And I rejiggered my mind and when I read the book, The Intelligent Investor. And from that point, I never bought another stock. I bought businesses that happened to be publicly traded, but I became an owner of a business, and I did not care whether a stock went up or down the next day or the next week or the next month or the next year, and I didn't have any idea what it would do. I didn't know what the stock market would do, but I knew businesses. I knew something.
I've asked people about your genius, whatever we describe it.
No, I'm a bright guy who's terribly interested in what he does. So I've spent a lifetime doing it, and I've surrounded myself with people that bring out the best in me. And you don't need to be a genius in what I do. That's the good thing about it. If I went into physics or a whole lot of other subjects, I'd be an also-ran. But I am in a game that you don't need. You probably need 120 points of IQ, but 170 doesn't do any better than 120. It may do worse, probably do worse, but you don't really need brains.
What do you need?
You need the right orientation. 90% of the people, I'm pulling a figure out of the air, but 90% of the people that buy stocks don't think of them the right way. They think about something that they hope goes up next week. And they think about the market as something they hope goes up. And if it's down, they feel worse. I feel better.
And you think about?
Pardon?
And what do you think about?
I think about what the company's going to be worth 10 or 20 years from now. And I hope it goes down when I buy it, because I'll buy more.
Do you have a competitive spirit? Clearly.
Yeah.
Clearly.
Well, but you got to be careful about what you compete in. It's a good thing I don't have a competitive spirit in chess or or football or anything like that. No, I'm an observer there. I enjoy watching things like that, but I try to keep my competitive spirit in a game where I can win.
Do you have a killer instinct?
Nah, not exactly. I've got. I wouldn't call it a killer instinct, but I do know this. When I want to do something, I always want to do it big.
What does that mean?
I put my whole net worth in City Service Preferred.
$120.
$114.75. And I put my whole net worth in, and I've never, since that day, and March 11th, 1942, I have never had less than 80% of my money in American business. You can call them stocks.
Or equities.
But I see them as American business. I've owned a piece of American business for at least 80% at all times. I don't want to own anything else. I want to own a home and things my family wants and all that. But owning 5 homes doesn't mean anything to me, because I'm going to be happy in one home, and there's a certain amount of things that go wrong with everything. And if I got 2 homes, I know I've got more problems and I don't have more happiness.
What brings you the happiness?
Oh, I would have to honestly say that what makes me happiest is what I'm doing. I enjoy 2 things about it. One, I know I'll win over time. That doesn't mean I'll beat everybody else or anything like that. But I'm in a game that's very, very, very easy if you have the right lessons in your mind about what you're buying. I'm not buying stocks. I'm buying pieces of overwhelmingly American business. And I'm happy when that's when I'm doing it. I'm happy when stocks are going down. I'm happier when stocks are going down, because I can buy more of them with the same amount of money. I'd be happy if I was a farmer. I'd want farmland to go down so I could buy more acreage. If I was, it just makes sense. And I'll tell you the second thing I really like. I like being trusted by people. And, I would rather do what I do with partners than do it sitting in a room myself, even though I might make more money that way.
You like the idea that people are trusting you with their savings.
Yeah. They just say, look, I've saved money. I don't know what to do with it. And
I trust you.
And they give it to me. And they don't, most of them give it to me. Certainly in the original days, but even now to an unusual degree, give it to me with the idea that it's for the lifetime. And then most of them, they've done this a long time ago, most of them give it away when they get through. They never quit saving. And of course, I'm sort of their savings machine.
They save it and then give it to you.
Yeah, and then they say, keep it, and just keep building it. And they don't do it with the idea they're going to retire when they're 65 and then build great castles or anything like that. They just basically, a few do. A few spend some money later on. But overwhelmingly, if they've been saving when they were 25 and saved a little money, gave it to me, they're still saving. There were 11 doctors that we met at a hilltop house. There was one friend of mine named Bill Angle, And he was trying to get these other doctors to join with me. So I don't know when it was, 1958 or 9. I invited 12 doctors to this dinner at Hilltop House. He had me come. And he basically said, this is my friend Warren, and if you got any brains, you'll give him some money. And so we spent the evening, and these guys were all probably in their low 30s. And 11 of the 12 put in $10,000 each. The 12th said to Bill, he said, well, what happens if we lose our money? And my friend Bill, never forget it, he said, well, dummy. He says, we'll form another partnership. That was the guy that didn't invest. He got reminded of this by the other 11 for the rest of his life. And those people stuck with me. And one of them died in the last year. It's a friend of mine to the end, at 101. And his name was Stan Truls. And he came from a little town, about 300 people near Omaha. And he became an ophthalmologist and a super wonderful guy in every way. I mean, he helped all his fellow doctors, and you couldn't find a finer guy than Stan. But 2 of the other 11, 2 of them are still alive. And the money and the amount of money, I mean, they haven't built, you know, they could have done anything. I mean, they could have lived bigger than anybody in Nebraska, but they went with the lives they liked. And
so have you.
Yeah.
So have you.
Yeah.
You live in the same house you've lived in for...
I've lived in the same house. I bought it in 1958. So 63 or 64 years. Quarter of the life of the country. I've lived a quarter of the life of the country in one house. And I like being 5 minutes from the office, too. I mean, just think if I'd had a 35-minute commute. I've gone to the same office now since January of 62. So it's been 60 years. And let's say I save 30 minutes every day in commute, each way.
Let me turn to the stockholders' letter that you wrote for 2021.
Well, that letter was, I started that letter in my head. I've already started next year's letter in my head. But I started that letter in my head, we'll say.
Because you can begin to see what 2022...
I know what I'm going to write about it, and then I just have to, it keeps forming. But that isn't a newsletter that comes out, it's what I want to talk to I was forged it originally in terms of my sisters, who had practically all their money in Berkshire. They trusted me 60 years ago, and they just put it all in. And they're very smart. My older sister Doris died here recently, but both of them very, very smart and interested in financial matters, but they're not a nut like me. And so they got other interests too. Basically, they've handed me all their money, and they don't want to hear day to day.
So you tell them what's happened in the last year.
Once a year, it's like I sit down with them and tell them, here's what might be interesting to you, and I'm doing that all year in my mind, and I've done it. I know what I'm going to talk about next year, unless something changes in a dramatic
way. Can you tell me what that is?
No, but I can tell you this. Last night, I went to Music Man, and among the people who went with me was my friend Carol Loomis. Carol was 92.
She's a great journalist and a good writer.
She starts editing. I send her the report, which I think is perfect always at the time. I send her the report in usually December, and she keeps sending back, and she kind of won't let me send it out without checking to make sure that I haven't left out a comma someplace or right up to the end. But so the report, although it's dated February 20th, that report basically was written. It was written in my head for a long time, but it was what I thought was finished probably in December. And then Carol tells me there's a lot of work to do.
No big investments in 2021 because you didn't see anything that met your requirement.
Yeah, and I wrote the report, and people can go to berkshirehathaway.com and they can see exactly what I think and have thought for 40-some years of each report.
But for you to make a big investment, what do you need to know?
I need to know that I think that Berkshire Hathaway is going to be worth more money someday down the road. Not tomorrow. I want it to go down if I'm buying something. And I would say this: the world has changed a lot since that report was written. But the world changed a lot in 2000, 2 years ago when the pandemic. Just think about it.
Because of the pandemic.
The pandemic. It's almost exactly 2 years later. An event happened 2 years ago, and we didn't know exactly what it was. We didn't know what the financial result would be. We didn't know what the physical result was. We just didn't know. But when I wrote my report in February, I didn't know the pandemic was going to hit, a week later. And I didn't know that the American financial system was on the brink of, chaos. A few weeks later, and if somebody wants to read a great book that just came out, it's a sensational book called $1 Trillion Triage that tells on a day-by-day basis what was going on in March that, where, in my opinion, Jay Powell, he matched Paul Volcker in terms of doing things that needed to be done that day, and it's a great day-by-day report. The book just came out a couple of days ago.
We expect the Fed will raise the rates. Does it remind you of 1970s?
Everything that happens in the investment world reminds me of something or other. I mean, every day. If it's a boring day, it reminds me of something. I mean, but I don't think that way. All I'm trying to do is buy businesses. Let's pretend there is no stock market. Let's say I had to buy these privately, like you buy a farm privately, like you buy an apartment house privately. They're investments. So you're looking to say, what can I do with money I've saved to put it away so I feel good about getting it back later under any circumstances, but not necessarily on a given moment. But if I have a farm, it's going to take me a while. But people would be so much better if they actually didn't have a stock market in terms of buying businesses. But,
You made two huge investments recently. One is Activision.
No, we have two fellows in the office that each, they manage a total about $30 billion between them, Ted Weschler and Todd Combs.
Two people you chose.
They've been with us for about 10 years each. They have total authority over the money they invest. They're just as independent in buying things as I am. I mean, if they decide to buy something in a country I've never heard of in the stock, I mean, they don't ask me. I mean, they don't.
But are you saying that maybe they were decided to?
Well, I've actually
investment in Activision.
I've actually said that one of those. I've said it very clearly, and there's a letter on the website that describes exactly the circumstances because they got misreported in the press originally, and so I have written a letter there because actually a number of other first-class news organizations picked up a story without checking whether it was true. I mean, they ran with it without independently reporting it. So I'm not going to name names, but there's some names in my letter, but they just ran it wrong, a wrong story, which had implications and so on. So the letter's up there. It's going to stay posted forever because it's the correct record. And what happened precisely is that one of the other fellows decided to buy Activision. Didn't ask me, and it's fine. I mean, but he bought it. He bought about I think I used a figure of 85%. I think when we double checked it, it was 76 or 7%. But we'll list every day that he bought it and the price he bought it. And the price was reported as wrong by the press. And then it was picked up by a whole bunch of other organizations and printed as wrong. And so millions of people read an incorrect story. And so we put up the correct facts. And we'll have at the annual meeting. I think I'll have a slide if anybody asks me for it. It'll show every day's purchases and exact price. And that was done by one of the fellows in the office. Now, and that was, like I say, 77% was in October and the rest was in early November. And he paid about $77 a share. And you can buy it today. And Microsoft announced it. The first story said weeks later, which makes it sound like 2 or 3 or 4 weeks later. It was probably 12 weeks later. You could said months later.
So the investment was months before Microsoft decided to acquire Activision.
The other guy liked it as a stock, as a business. And so he was buying it. And he paid an average of, like I say, $77 a share. And we will have a list of every day at every price. And then I guess it was, there was a big expose type story run. But he wasn't buying during any of that period. And then the preliminary proxy came out. It's been filed with the SEC by Activision, describing the history of the deal as to when Microsoft came to them. And it was sometime in a couple months later that Microsoft first approached Bobby Kotick, and then 4 other people came. You can read it all. It's filed with the SEC. And then after it was announced, the stock, you could buy the stock at $78 a share. So the implication of the first story was that it was somehow that somebody made a great deal by getting tipped it off or some damn thing.
Simply
you
not
could
true.
have bought $1 a share. You could have bought after it was announced higher than one of the other fellows paid for about. He bought about close to 15 million shares. He still got it.
How about Occidental?
Well, Occidental, a week ago, a couple of years ago, we financed Occidental.
And had some warrants coming out of that.
Vicky Hollow, who I'd never met before. And I got a call on a Friday and Bank of America saying that Occidental was going to need some money to buy Anadarko. And I think it was known then they were in competition with Chevron. And would I meet with them? Because they needed a lot of money fast. And I said, sure, how about tomorrow? And went back and forth. Turned out they came up Sunday instead of Friday. And we met at 10 o'clock in my office on a Sunday. And I said, we'll give you $10 billion under these circumstances. But we'll do it. We'll do it tomorrow. And that's not Wall Street, but that's Berkshire. And so, and they knew I was good for it. And so we made a deal. Monday night, the next day at night, I told our guys, you work all night. Cravath works all night for them. And we get this thing done on Tuesday.
But is there much negotiation, or you simply say, this is what I will do?
This is what I'll do. I always say that's what I'll do. I mean, I've said that's what I'll do many times. And I've always, and that is all I'll do.
But this is what you have come to represent. I mean, think of the financial crisis and think of Goldman Sachs and think.
I said what I do.
You said what you do, but it gave them credibility when they needed it, that Warren Buffett and Berkshire Hathaway had decided to have confidence in them.
We were putting in X billions of dollars And the when they questioned we were putting it in, it wasn't an IOU or anything else. We sent them the cash. And it was right after Lehman. And there was a run on the whole economic system. Everybody was a domino. And the dominoes were falling. And Goldman Sachs knew they'd be fine if all the dominoes didn't fall. And they had to worry about the United States Congress because they were really mad at banks. This time they weren't mad at banks in this particular case, but they were mad at banks. And they really some of them didn't fully understand what the hell was going to happen. And we had that.
They were mad because this was a financial crisis.
It was more than, it was a financial crisis cubed.
But it had an origin in financial institutions.
A lot of people did a lot of things wrong, but there was plenty of it in Wall Street. Plenty of it in Wall Street. But there was plenty of it elsewhere too. I want to emphasize that. But Wall Street made a lot of money out of doing a lot of things that contributed to the crisis.
Here's my point. Berkshire and Warren Buffett emerged to a point where your reputation and your credibility
and our money.
And your money.
The money was important, but it was a determining factor.
They wanted the money.
Yeah.
But they also wanted credibility.
They had to have instant credibility.
And that's what you gave them.
They had to have somebody who counted besides people whose position it was to lie.
And how did you build that? Which is an essential part of who you are and Berkshire Hathaway is.
Well, I started on March 11th, 1942.
As we talked.
And I had a father that was the right father. Yeah, and I was lucky.
I think you may have heard this. Lenin once said, there are decades when nothing happens, and then there are weeks when decades happen.
That's very well put. And when you're buying businesses, don't call them stocks. When you're buying businesses, when you're buying apartment houses, sometimes when you're buying raw land, all kinds of things. There's times when you get a chance to act and do something really intelligent. May happen once every 10 years, once every 20 years. Depends on what field you're in, where you live, what you know, all of that. But most of the important things, there's a lot of foundational work, but the actual big acts in life are when you propose to your spouse. I mean, forget all the other stuff. I mean, if you made the right decision and you get the right answer from he or she, you're 90% of the way home in life.
But also things happen in the world, like the pandemic.
That's true, too.
And it can change everything, as it did.
It happened in 1929.
It happened in 1918,
I forget when the things were, 1907. I mean, when they closed the stock exchange back in 1914 for a long period of time. People don't ever think about that. 9/11, they closed the stock exchange for a few days. And there are big events in this world.
We're going through one of them right now.
Yeah, but I won't get into discussing that particularly.
Allow me this. I mean, this is having a huge effect on the world order.
Yeah, but it doesn't do me any good, and it doesn't do the world any good for me to talk about it. So,
can we talk about the global economy then? In terms of where we are.
I can tell you where we are, but. But
let me phrase it this way: in terms of the global economy, I mean, you look at the United States.
United States economy, and it's very easy to look at the statistics on it. I mean, more people, a greater percentage of the American population is wealthy now, or having more income now than they've ever had. And if you look at whether Bank of America can give you their average deposit, I mean, you just look at the wealth that's out there, and that doesn't mean everybody's wealthy, but it does mean relative to any other period of time. People people have more money now. They get mortgages at lower rates than they've ever gotten. So if they want to buy a house or something,
Yeah, but is that going to continue? I mean, mortgage rates are raising, as you know.
Yeah,
We're in an inflationary period.
I'm not going to predict interest rates for you. I'm just telling you.
I'm not asking you to predict anything about stocks.
But right today, Charlie.
You live in an environment.
Yeah, you live in an environment where the bottom 2% in terms of income in the United States, the bottom 5%, and for sure the top 1%, all live better than John D. Rockefeller was living when I was 6 years old. John D. Rockefeller was the richest man in the world. And today, you can get better medicine, better education, better entertainment, better transportation. You can do everything better than he could. You can, it's astounding. That's in my lifetime. That if you wanted to watch a football game, he still had to go there. and I can sit there with this big screen, and they keep showing me the replay, so that explaining to me what happened and everything. And maybe everybody doesn't have a screen as big as mine, but damn near everybody has a screen or an iPhone or a computer or access to one, and they have access. I mean, when I was born, the dentist didn't use Novocaine. When I went
so there has been progress, obviously.
In medicine.
And nowhere more than in the United States.
Well, relative to the base, maybe more than, but there's no country that's done what our country's done. If you go back 3 of my lifetimes, you're looking, you've been to Colonial.
You're 91, so.
It's 3 lifetimes. You are looking at less than 1% of the world's population, closer to half of 1%. Half of 1% of the people in the world are sitting in this land. They don't work harder than people in all the rest of the world. In terms of hours of unpleasant labor, everybody's got hours of unpleasant labor in those days practically. They don't come laden with gold and, they are half of 1%. And they work the same hours, they got the same IQs. They may be a little self-selected in terms of enterprise, in terms of going across oceans and things. And fast forward a couple of lifetimes, and they've got 20% plus of all the bounty in the world. That is something that has worked like nothing. Just imagine that. If you'd gone to anybody in the Constitutional Congress in 1789, if you go to any one of the representatives there and you said, I want to tell you what this place is going to look like, in 3 more of your lifetimes, your great-great-grandchildren, are going to be flying in the skies. They're going to be watching sports all over the world. They're going to be entertained. Their medicine. They'd have hauled you off to a lunatic society.